Minister Narendra Modi, after speaking for about 90 minutes, the Prime Minister spoke for and gave out his roadmap, not just for the Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, but also extremely crucial of what India's responsibilities need to be, the work that needs to be done now for the achievements 25 years from now, when the nation celebrates 100 years of India's independence in 2047. But the timing and the most critical aspects that he spoke about, extremely interesting. He defended the farm laws. The Prime Minister very strongly defended the farm laws and said the effort is to strengthen the small farmer. Also extremely significant when he spoke of the surgical strikes and the airstrikes and spoke of India's firm resolve. When he spoke of manufacturing, the Prime Minister spoke of how our manufacturers need to keep in mind that it's the country's prestige that's at stake. When they export something, it's India's name that's associated with those components. Joining me on the broadcast is Rajghat, Group Editorial Director Publishing of the India Today Group, and of course Lieutenant General Syed Atta Hasnain, former General Officer Commanding of the Srinagar Corps. Raj, key takeaway, if we were to look at the word cloud, Raj, and we were just making a point, the Prime Minister spoke about farmers around 25 times. 25 times was farm laws one of his main focus areas. Raj.
Gaurav, I thought it went far beyond that. It was a soaring, inspiring speech, befitting of the 75th Independence Day. He was talked of the past. We celebrated that, and a very sobering thought for the future. Set the goals for 100 years and talked of a modern, inclusive India. And in doing so, not just farmers, there was an emphasis on every aspect, whether it was for farmers, whether it was for the armed forces, whether it was for the businessmen, whether for the workers, the vendors, women, and the youth. You know, it was so sort of inclusive in terms of setting goals across the roadmap of Vikas that was being talked about, and talked of a modern India. When he said, let's look at next-gen infrastructure, let's look at cutting-edge technology, let's look at changing the way we do manufacturing, let's be world-class. So I think the large message that was coming on was that we had, while we have plenty to celebrate about, there's a whole generation that needs to work hard for India to achieve the kind of things that we need to do. In 100 years, we need to sort out all the basic issues. And he emphasized on that, whether it was for water, housing for all, road connectivity, education, health, all these fundamental things that we need to achieve. Apart from the fact that we need to excel, whether it was in sports, whether it was in, he cheered the Olympians and talked of how we should build a whole generation of sportsmen that was there. All these things were very important for the fact of what we need to achieve in the constitution that had been laid down, 75 years ago, which was, you need to have liberty, you need to have equality, you need to have fraternity, you have to be a sovereign, socialist, democratic republic. All those qualities that are needed to give us the independence, the unity and the integrity of the country. Everything. He had words for armed forces, lauded them, and set the task ahead for the future. So I think
Raj, give me a moment.
Was a soaring speech.
These images, I want to for a moment come to these images. Usually the Prime Minister mingles with NCC cadets, but at this point of time, do keep in mind there is Corona, but the Prime Minister, he has come out of his vehicle and he's walking towards our Olympians. The nation is very proud of them. He's also telling them to continue to sit. Usually after the Independence Day, he mingles with the NCC cadets and the school students. That process, in a way, is still on. As you look at these images, there he is with the students. He really enjoys that. But at the same time, social distancing is extremely important. So he's telling them, continue sitting, keep sitting, and they're all sitting in their places. There are 500 NCC cadets of the Army, Navy and Air Force from different schools who are there. Usually they all rush to the Prime Minister. They take selfies with the Prime Minister, and we've seen this year on year, as you can see in these images on your television screen. But this year, do keep in mind that social distancing remains extremely important. Corona is still a threat, and the Prime Minister referred to the threat of Corona, but also appreciated the work of our doctors, of our frontline healthcare workers, of sanitation workers and India's scientists who manufactured the vaccine to put India in a strong position to fight back. He spoke about how we've vaccinated 54 crore people and counting. They've got the first dose. He spoke of the Coven app, the online digital Coven portal, and the fact that India is giving digital certificates. Of course, people do have their mobile phones out. They want a picture with the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister is asking them to sit, but with both hands, waving at the people. Jalnata Hasnain, if I could bring you in, this is something he's done year on year. But what's extremely interesting, as he does that, he's instantly bonding with people who are there, General Hasnain.
With opportunities.
Absolutely, Gaurav. And Jai Hind to you and to the nation in general. What a fascinating speech, and after that the right gestures, symbolism, going down to the people, which he does every year, which he's known for, and this year taking all the precautions, particularly this gesture of going down to the Olympians, keeping them sitting and gesturing to them, encouraging them. I think these are all typical, gestures of a great leader, and obviously our Prime Minister is known for that. The very important aspect which he has looked at in his speech in particular today, what fascinated me was that while speaking about 74 years, getting into the 75th year, he did not leave out the aspect of the 100th year. The look, the consideration for the next 25 years. That is the very, very important agenda which he has set out for the entire nation.
Okay, General, stay with me. Rajchingappa is with me. We're also being joined by Supriya Srinath, firebrand spokesperson and leader of the Congress party. Supriya, the Prime Minister very strongly defended the farm laws, also spoke about the marginal farmers or the small farmers and the efforts that are being made to ensure that they come up. Swamitva Yojana, where he's speaking about ownership of small landholdings. Supriya, your key takeaway.
So thank you very much for having me on the show, and I wish you, your entire team and each of our panelists here and the entire country an extremely happy Independence Day. This independence was fought for with much valor and courage, and we must ensure that we preserve our happiness under every circumstance. And freedom really means freedom of speech and expression, freedom to survive with a head held high. So very, very happy Independence Day to the entire country. I heard the Prime Minister for about 90 odd minutes. I was hoping that the Prime Minister will today come to the country and speak the truth. With all due respect to his office and with all due respect to the ceremony that marks India's Independence Day, I wish the Prime Minister had accepted some of his mistakes and apologized for his COVID failure, because he seems to be patting his back as far as COVID is concerned. He's misleading the country when he talks about 54 crore dosages, because the reality is that in a nation of 140 crore people, we've been able to doubly, fully vaccinate only 8.5%, less than 12 crore of our population. He spoke about scientists and agriculture. While it sounds very good, I wish he had spoken something about 600 farmers who have so far lost their lives protesting against the farm laws, much against their wishes that have been brought. I wish he had spoken about that. He spoke about women's safety, and he spoke about women. I welcome the fact that there should be women in combat and there should be women in sainik schools. However, I wish he had spoken about the brutal crime against women right under his nose in India's national capital. I mean, a 9-year-old, a 6-year-old, right where he was speaking, 20 kilometers away from that. I wish he had spoken about this. He spoke about the Northeast. I am glad he spoke about the Northeast, But I wish he had apologized to the country. Why Assam and Mizoram are at war with each other? This is unprecedented. We've not seen this kind of a situation.
Okay.
He spoke about economy, and I'm going to end there. Yes, you should speak about economy, but should you not tell your commerce minister to stop threatening and almost, abusing Indian industry who are partners in development? You spoke about development, I think 21 times. That's what your word cloud says.
Yes.
Development will see Indian industry contribute. You cannot threaten them. You cannot abuse them. That's what Minister Goyal seemed to be doing when he spoke to CII. So there were many, many shortcomings. The corona crisis was unprecedented.
Okay, you've spoken of the corona crisis. You've spoken of the shortcomings.
He did not make a mention of that.
Okay, but let me, while of course you must continue to highlight what the opposition says are the shortcomings, but the achievements of the nation. And Raj Chingappa, as the Congress says, find 54 crore doses, and the Prime Minister specified these are 54 crore doses. In your appreciation, Raj Chingappa, an achievement for a nation. We have our own vaccine, and he said because we have our own vaccine, we were able to come out of this situation better than what it could have been if we didn't have our own vaccine.
Gaurav, I think on COVID, there's a lot of work to be done. We have done a lot. It is, a great achievement, a very creditable achievement that our own scientists have been able to evolve a vaccine. But there's plenty of work to do, as we all know. There's a third wave around the corner, and it is good to keep a reality check on all these things. But let's, if you go beyond COVID, which has affected the entire world, everyone is trying their best to do what they need to do to save their population, and so is India. There are shortcomings, we all know that. But we all, on this celebratory day, we all need to put our heads together and our shoulders together and work for the nation to ensure that we have health and, of course, prosperity. The economy is a serious issue. We need to deal with that. But let us also look back at the welfare things that have been done by Mr. Modi. And I think there, to his credit, he had set the agenda in his first Independence Day speech in 2014, where he talked of a Swachh Bharat. He talked of a development India. And over these years, you have seen he has accelerated those programs. Not that they were not there before, but his ability to accelerate and create a sort of a Jan Andolan for a lot of these programs need to be appreciated. Whether it is, if you look at the toilet program that's there, that, the Swachh Bharat, where he's been able to have defecation free across most of the country. And then you will look at housing for all. These are things in progress. His latest thing about, having tapped potable water for every household, banking the uninsured. These are very, very important fundamental necessities that he has put in progress.
Ambitious
very
programs.
Importantly,
ambitious programs. He's giving a timeline. What he's also saying is now we need to reach 100%. 100%. Har Ghar Jal. Go on, complete your point, sir.
Gaurav, let's not forget there's a lot of work to be done. And that is very important. He talked of a generation that needs to put the youth, particularly the can-do spirit that he talked about. We all need to put that together to sort out some of the most fundamental problems we should have sorted out earlier, but we are now on the path of doing so. So it is also a very sobering speech. It could have soared in oratory, but there's a lot of sobering development issues that we need to tackle, apart from our most immediate issues of COVID and ensuring that everybody gets vaccinated. And of course, most important also, the economy is put back on the growth path. We all know that's a major problem. It's not just an Indian problem, it's across the world, but we need to take care of that. And I think he set some goals for that as well.
Setting goals is extremely important. Goals, short term, medium term, and of course, when he says we celebrate 100 years of India's independence in 2047, what we set out today, sankalp jo aaj lenge, siddhi, achievement would be in 2047. But he also spoke extremely important about responsibilities. We'll talk about that in greater detail. And General, when the Prime Minister says what the government is doing, he also expects a lot of the citizens, and that's extremely critical. From vocal to local to conserving water to single-use plastic-free India, not to pollute rivers, reduce use of cash. All of this, General, extremely important if we actually want to fulfill our aim of being a developed nation.
The actual comprehensive nature of this particular speech was what I think appeals to me the maximum. In 90 minutes, he must have covered about 50 domains, perhaps. Domains of governance which you normally don't otherwise look at. And this is one day in the year, perhaps, which is the Prime Minister does it brilliantly. Absolutely right. The aspects of citizen responsibility. Simple things like the single-use plastic. That's something which no one, I think, ever focuses on the year around. The cleanliness of beaches. The importance of not throwing your garbage into your rivers. Local for vocal. And I think the summation at the end, with that little bit of a poetic touch, yahi samay hai, sahi samay hai, Bharat ka anmol samay hai. I think this was a wonderful summation of the entire speech.
General, stay with me. Let's now take this step by step. When the Prime Minister talks about what is being done for farmers, let's pick up farmers first. I'll come to COVID in just a moment. The Prime Minister on farm issues.
हर छोटे किसानों के छोटे छोटे खर्च को ध्यान में रखते हुए पीएम किसान सम्मान निधि योजना चलाई जा रही है। 10 करोड़ से अधिक किसान परिवारों के बैंक खातों में अब तक 2 लाख करोड़ से ज्यादा रकम सीधी उनके खाते में जमा करा दी गई है। छोटा किसान अब हमारे लिए हमारा मंत्र है, हमारा संकल्प है, छोटा किसान बने देश की शान।
Supriya Srinath, the Prime Minister talks of the Chota Kisan. When he talks of the Swamitya Yojana, where 80% of farmers have less than 2 hectares, they should own their land. When the cooperative, they come together, they earn more. Is he addressing, Supriya Srinath, the issue, perhaps setting the record straight on farm laws and the agitation?
You know, without meaning to, he has actually said what we've been saying for a very long time on these farm laws. सच की एक खासियत होती है कि वो निकल ही आता है और वो सच निकल आया. We have been saying that the fundamental flaws in this farm laws, and one of them is that 80% of India's farmers have land holdings of less than 2 hectares. And when you say that the entire nation is a market, you are actually expecting those 80% farmers to take their goods from Uttar Pradesh to Tamil Nadu and sell them. Obviously, that is not feasible. And this is what we've been saying. You are leaving them at the mercy of big businesses. I am glad he said that himself today, because this statistic is extremely important.
Are small farmers actually being left to the mercy? But isn't he addressing that issue when he's talking about?
Let me finish my point, please.
When he's talking about, let me get Rajghat up. So on India today, let's get facts. Let's get facts.
No, just 1 second. I wasn't done with. Gaurav, you can't. I'm sorry, Gaurav. You cannot interfere every time I'm speaking.
I'm not interfering. I'm not interrupting either.
You've
made your point. I'm getting a response. Go on.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, complete your point.
No, I did not make my point. No, I did not make my point. Please wait. I'm still talking. So that's the first thing. The Prime Minister has said what we've been saying all along. The Prime Minister talks about PM Kisan Yojana. I want to remind him, firstly, there are 6.5 crore farmers who are still out of it. Secondly, you have raised the cost of agriculture per hectare by 15,000 rupees because diesel is astronomically high. There is huge GST on fertilizers, on pesticides, on agricultural equipment. The farmers are refusing to sow their crops. There are 600 farmers who are dead, protesting against farm laws. Why not spare a thought for them? I really want to ask.
Ma'am, this is the second time you're repeating the same point. Since brevity is always your forte, Supriya Srinath, let's move to the next point. The point about 600 farmers is being made the third time. But Raj Chingappa, isn't this where the Prime Minister is talking about Swamitya Yojana, of where they're trying to get farmers to own land, form cooperatives and warehouses at block levels? Does that help, sir?
Gaurav, I think the farm reforms were necessary. We had to break the sort of logjam that had happened in agriculture. There were certain laws that had been passed. Of course, any law can be amended. Those steps need to be taken. whatever the farmers think is appropriate for them, they need to be consulted and taken in. But the fundamental issue of farm reform is necessary. There could be debate as to how you need to achieve that target, what you need to do to help the farmers, what is the kind of assistance you need to do. But there is no doubt that we have to break the shackles of agriculture that has restrained the growth for all these years. There are areas that we need to focus on, whether it's edible oils, whether it's pulses, where we continue to import our entire focus on producing rice and wheat at the cost of other things. Horticulture is a huge area that could benefit the farmers in terms of fruits and vegetables, not only for our own country, we have a huge domestic market, but how do we export them as well? So these are major focus areas for agriculture. When we look ahead at 25 years, we need to, if you're talking of, ending the dependence on energy, there is a need to end the dependence on fundamental things like pulses and edible oils that we still continue to import in large numbers. And why not can't our farmers do these and produce the kind of things that we need to do to ensure that we have agriculture self-sufficiency of the kind we need? I'm not saying we should manufacture everything, we shouldn't import anything, but there is a certain areas that we need to defocus from. We had done that. We had achieved grain self-sufficiency.
Okay.
Now we have to achieve horticulture and other kinds of self-sufficiency that are important. Let's not forget the marine economy that we have. There's so much that we can do in terms of fishing. There's a lot of focus that we need to bring together and get together. Yes, there could be criticism on the various laws that are being passed, but I think the general direction is set, and that needs to be implemented with urgency. And you take the farmers and their views and their opinions, and at the end of the day, they are producing. So you need to get them on board. You cannot have a confrontation between government and farmers. Farmers are our backbone.
Yes.
And whatever they require, we need to provide that. And I think the government should work towards that endeavor.
Tom Varakan, Supriya Srinath's criticism is that the government, the Prime Minister, did not mention the farmers whose lives, 600 farmers, she says, they've ended their lives in this agitation. The Prime Minister is not mentioning the core issue that the farmers are facing.
Gaurav, first let me greet through you, the nation, and all our panelists. This is a day for celebration. Criticisms are pre-scripted from the AICC office. So I really do not want to go into depth on these issues, because these are pre-prepared. Even before the speech is made, they have a prepared line. And right now when I'm speaking, there is a flag unfurling at the AICC headquarters. I wish some of these points are raised there by the current Congress president. Now the point here is, I think this was one of the most statesman-like speech I've ever heard in my lifetime. This was 90 minutes of covering the entire nation. He talked about a plan, a roadmap for the next 25 years, the present. He talked about the past, the present, and the future. He touched on every sector which was not dwelt upon, even the chawal that is fortified. These are detailing that the Prime Minister did, that the food that is reaching the poorest of poor, it is fortified, nourishment for them. He's talked about sports, he's talked about the Olympic performances, he's talked about the defense, he's talked about terrorism and expansionism. He's made reference to the entire thing. I wish the opposition takes note and cooperates in this year of the 74th Independence Day celebration, join hands to strengthen the nation.
Okay, will the opposition join hands to strengthen the nation? I'm coming to that point in just a moment, but let's listen into the Prime Minister. So let's take this step by step. First, welcoming the achievements of our Olympians. The Prime Minister clapped for our Olympians, asked the nation to join and said our Olympians, they've inspired another generation of sportspersons across the country. Let's listen in.
हमारे खिलाड़ियों के सम्मान में आइए कुछ पल तालियां बजा करके उनका सम्मान करें। भारत के खेलों का सम्मान, भारत की युवा पीढ़ी का सम्मान, भारत को गौरव दिलाने वाले युवाओं का सम्मान देश करोड़ों देशवासी आज तालियों की गड़गड़ाहट के साथ हमारे इन जवानों का, देश की युवा पीढ़ी का गौरव कर रहे हैं, सम्मान कर रहे हैं।
General Hasnain, 7 medals, the best ever that India has managed to get. 1 gold, 2 silver, 4 bronze. The fact that the Olympians, the medal winners were on the ramparts, the participants were all there at the Gyanpath. What signal does this send out, sir? Does it actually inspire the next generation of Olympians and sportspersons?
See, Gaurav, you have to link this particular aspect to what the Prime Minister also said about the new generation. He called it a can-do generation. Can-do is not only in Olympics, in anything. And Olympics is a symbol of that. The fact that on the sports field, we have made this kind of an advancement despite the 18 months of COVID behind us is a very distinctive achievement, there's no doubt. And by encouraging them, probably tomorrow there's a reception which the Prime Minister is giving to all the Olympians. It is these gestures which will ensure that everything through the can-do generation is conveyed in such a positive manner that that spirit, the positive spirit which is necessary, can continue to take us forward.
Rajchingappa, your take? This is the can-do generation and perhaps has to do generation. Now, when we were speaking to our Olympians and medal winners, they said they're already preparing for the next championship and the goal is the next Olympics in Paris.
Gaurav, on sports, there's no doubt that, it was brilliant performance that happened in the Olympics this time, but we need a lot more to be done. We know that we are capable of getting many more golds, many more silvers and bronzes, and putting more sportsmen on it. And I think what this does, particularly Neeraj Chopra's gold for the javelin, is open the track and field where there are so many medals to be won. We've been good at hockey in the past. Now we've had a great revival. We've been good at badminton. We've been good at shooting. We've been good at archery to some extent. And of course, wrestling and weightlifting. But there are so many other disciplines that we need to now, when we talk of it, and if we talk of a can-do generation in sports particularly, we need to expand that considerably. And the lessons that we learn from the sportsmen who've excelled, some are really, really tough stories that are there. We need to correct that and encourage our sportsmen beyond cricket and give them the kind of encouragement. We saw how hockey could be revived if you had a focused approach towards hockey. You supported them. You've got the best coaches. We saw how Neeraj Chopra, individually and with the army and private sector help, blossomed into a world champion, an Olympic champion. Now, these are the kind of things we need to do when we're looking ahead at 25 years ahead. Let's benchmark ourselves much higher than just 7 medals. Let us say, like China did, and I'm not trying to compare China at this time, but various countries did, even Britain, the Great Britain did, to boost their medal levels and to, in that process, energize the youth. So I think sports is a very critical area that if you put it all together properly, you have a plan, you have a mission, not just for Paris, but looking ahead at the next 3 or 4 Olympics and saying how many disciplines I can excel in, where are the medals available, so that we can boost it and give our youth that sense of can-do that we talked about. And of course, let's not forget, sports is not just one area. We need to go far beyond. Employment, jobs is one of the big issues. And the Prime Minister touched on, I think, a very critical area, which is infrastructure. Can we make what you call the Gati, Shakti? Can we get this infrastructure master plan going? Because in that, whether it's roads, whether it's rails, whether it's shipping, there is so much employment apart from modernizing the country, road connectivity. Now, these are areas that our youth really, apart from sports and others, need to focus on. Where do we get the jobs? And I think he set the entire bar much, much higher, because when he talked of a modern, world-class India, it also brought that vision. It is a soaring vision, which we all need to achieve for. I mean, this is what we want India to head towards. We know of the unicorns. We have seen how our youngsters, the startups, can do amazing amount. We unleash this phenomenal animal youth spirit that's there and give them the opportunities. I think that's what the next 25 years calls for, to build this new India through this new generation through this fantastic can-do spirit, but give them the opportunities. And this is the
Extremely
time,
interesting.
more than at any other time.
Extremely interesting that the Prime Minister is actually talking about a vision of 25 years from now, when the country will celebrate 100 years of India's independence. And the fact, Supriya Srinath, that he says the sankalp or the resolve that's taken today will be the siddhi, will be the achievement 25 years from now, whoever the Prime Minister will be. Now, when we come to sports, and specifically the fact that our Olympians were all there, medal winners on the ramparts of the Red Fort, the fact that there was a TOPS scheme, the Target Olympic Podium scheme, does that help, Supriya Srinath? Is that moving in the right direction according to the opposition?
There is no doubt that our Olympians and anybody who wins glory and honor for the country should be honored, and I'm glad they got places of prominence. I was only hoping, and I will say this with all due respect to what the Prime Minister said about the Olympians, two things. I wish his government and I wish the Prime Minister had not cut the sports budget by 240 crore rupees in this Olympic year. Remember, the budget was down by 240 crore rupees in an Olympic year. So I wish he sometimes walks the talk. You know, it's all very good to have semantics. When you're felicitating those people, your pictures are all over, their pictures are very tiny. That is still acceptable. But do not cut the infrastructure. When you talk about them inspiring a generation, give them the ecosystem to inspire a generation. He cut sports budget by 240 crore rupees this year, which is unacceptable. And I will also say, most of those sports people are children of farmers who you and your government continue to call Atankwadi and Mawali. Stop doing that. I will just make a very brief point about the youth of this country. They are the backbone. They are what we need to work towards. The youth of the country in the last 7 years has been phenomenally unoccupied because you have refused to create jobs for them. I wish the Prime Minister, while laying the foundation for the next 25 years, had also reflected on the last 7 and spoken about the joblessness in this country, which, you ask me, is a ticking time bomb and will turn our demographic dividend into a demographic disaster. And the Prime Minister realizes that, which is what there was no mention.
There are multiple points that Supriya Srinath raises, from cutting the sports budget to joblessness, something that Rajghat is also highlighting.
Gaurav, 100 lakh crores has been allocated for infrastructure. I saw it on, I was seeing the transmission from your channel. I'm happy that was highlighted. And I wish our esteemed panelists from the Congress also should have read it. This is the roadmap that we have and will continue to have for development of infrastructure and employment structure. This development is all about getting employment. It's not, you don't invest in 100 lakh crores just saying that you will establish a factory, but this is an all-round growth which the Congress will never understand because they never thought about such developmental activity. This is a massive widescreen exposure. The fact that he's also addressed industrialists, advise them on exports, that your products are brand ambassadors of our country, not your company. He talked
Respond to the criticism that Supriya Srinath raises, that the Prime Minister may be saying this. Piyush Goyal had said something completely different, which Supriya Srinath says is virtually threatening the manufacturers and the industrialists.
The Honourable Minister mentioned certain issues which has been taken out of context. The Minister mentioned it in the context of certain developments. To isolate a statement then push it forward is not correct. Read it in the larger context. This is typical of the Congress party. They pick issues out of context and try to plaster it. And the reality is that they have been reduced to what they are. And in the coming days, God willing, we pray that they get more seats. But the point is, I don't see no hope in hell if this is the kind of attitude they have, the kind of cynicism they have on Independence Day. They dare say things. I mean, let's join hands and develop this country. This is our country. This is not about BJP or Congress. This is about our nation. On this day, please pay attention of what you can do, what you can contribute as a constructive opposition party. We want you to be a constructive opposition party.
Can I please come in if that sermon is over?
Yes.
failing
Okay,
in
Supriya
that too.
Srinath wants to respond to this before I come to the points about Jammu and Kashmir and of course surgical strikes and multiple other things. But Supriya Srinath, please respond, ma'am.
The point that your channel has made about the word cloud, 21 times development was mentioned. I want to know what development has happened in the last 7. How many jobs have been created? Which industries are flourishing? He talks about startups, the number of MSMEs that have shut shop. And please let me tell you, this government cannot hide behind COVID. The economic ruin predates COVID. Our economy collapsed even before COVID set in. Remember demonetization? Remember how hurriedly and how badly the GST was implemented? MSMEs haven't been able to get back to their feet.
Okay.
When you talk about the Indian industry, they are partners in growth. And I'm sorry, this is not out of context. Every industrialist has said this was almost threatening and wasn't this extortionary at one level? So I'm sorry to say,
Today,
what
Supriya
developments have you
Srinath,
done?
if I
How
may,
many
we are
jobs have
talking
you
about
created? How many
what the
people are
Prime Minister
gainfully
said
employed
from
in
the
this country
ramparts of
is
the Red Fort
important.
and the road ahead. We've been having these debates day in and day out.
So he needs
but
to reflect.
the point,
He needs to speak the truth.
so the Congress says that the
He
Prime
needs to
Minister wasn't
speak
speaking the truth from the
That's also
ramparts of
part
the Red
what
Fort.
The Prime Minister does from the ramparts of Red Fort.
Okay, the Prime Minister on delimitation in Jammu and Kashmir, the development of Ladakh and the road ahead. Let's listen in.
जम्मू हो या कश्मीर, विकास का संतुलन अब जमीन पर दिख रहा है। जम्मू कश्मीर में ही डीलिमिटेशन कमीशन का गठन हो चुका है और भविष्य में विधानसभा चुनावों के लिए भी तैयारियां चल रही है। लद्दाख भी विकास की अपनी असीम संभावनाओं की तरफ आगे बढ़ चला है।
Jal Hasnain, Jammu, Kashmir, Ladakh. An interesting aspect pointed out by India Today's Ashraf Wani, my colleague, was no internet blocked today. This is Independence Day. Another important aspect, you have the tricolour from Gulmarg to Srinagar to multiple other parts of Jammu and Kashmir and also, of course, Ladakh. General, your take, is this new India?
Gaurav, I'm tempted to jump into the questions which you ask. But I'm sorry, I'm constrained to comment upon my fellow panelists first. This is not the occasion I was expecting to come on your channel today and listen to this kind of a exchange between the two main leading political parties of the country. I would request them, you're listening to a soldier, you're listening to a general officer of the Indian Army. My advice to you, please, is spare this particular day. This is Independence Day of India. This is the 74th anniversary of our independence. Please spare the nation your particular exchanges which you have every day on the streets or in the parliament or anywhere else. Give us this day to ourselves. And please listen and create some positivity for today, if nothing else. That's my advice to you before I come back to the question, which is a very passionate one for me too, about Jammu and Kashmir. The greatest thing which I'm seeing today, in fact, a couple of days before, is this aspect of the national flag. The tricolour, 100-foot mast at Gulmarg, 100-foot mast at Hari Parbat. And besides that, these are the only two well-known places. Besides that, every institution, every school, every college, every government organization is having a flag at its office. And this flag is fluttering without any protection. This is the change. This is the new India that we are talking about. We are looking at the integration of every part of the country to us. The parts which have felt that they have not been a part of India are today marching on the path of once again showing themselves, proving to the nation that they are as much equal parts of India. As far as development is concerned, there's no doubt Jammu and Kashmir in the last 2 years has changed tremendously. Although there are operations going on once in a while, there's a huge downscaling of the overall security grid. We are ensuring that whatever can possibly happen as ramifications of what's happening in Afghanistan, etc., all that is ensured. But at the same time, you're finding, for example, today, the 4G is not down. The internet is not down. This is a huge development after years which has taken place. I think the networks which had been created in Jammu and Kashmir over these years appear to have been largely dismantled, although I'll never claim that they have been completely dismantled.
Okay.
We need to take much more precautions and go much more further. But I'm hugely encouraged by the developments in Jammu and Kashmir, and I think the Prime Minister has rightly pointed them out.
Rajghat, is that also your appreciation, sir? The tricolour fluttering proudly. You must, Supriya, but let me bring in Rajghat first, because this is a very important aspect that the General has highlighted and something perhaps the nation should appreciate. In Jammu, Kashmir and Ladakh, are we watching things which we haven't seen before, the manner in which we are watching this today? Rajghat, the tricolour, internet not being down.
Gaurav, there is a sea change that has happened, no doubt, particularly on the security situation. I had gone down in September 2019, so a month after the abrogation of Article 370, a decisive, bold move to end the ambiguity of the state of Jammu and Kashmir. And the security situation there, when I went, apart from the democratic processes, had been completely halted. If you recall, there was even an internet blockade. There was no communication. When I went this July, everything had changed in terms of that. I was able to move freely. I didn't need security to follow me wherever I went. The internets were working. The tourists were back. And you could clearly see that the number of incidents of security and everything else had declined. And there lies the success in the last 2 years of what has happened in Jammu and Kashmir. When it comes to development, there's a lot more needs to be done clearly over there. As the same problems that beset the rest of India in terms of jobs, in terms of having great infrastructure, continue to beset Jammu and Kashmir. They've had a setback because of COVID. It is a setback right across. So soon after the abrogation of Article 370 and their entire development plans that they unfurled, they are spending a lot of money. I think we will begin to see those results in the next 2 years. It's very important that you keep the focus. Work hard now that COVID is beginning to lessen. All the infrastructure projects they had needs to be done, and they need things that could get jobs for the local people and the assurances that they have that in terms of statehood that they want to have the elections early, bring the democratic. They have had highly successful panchayat elections as well as district council elections. These are very good progressive signs. We need to move forward on the democratic path. Get back, a people's representation over there, as well as the development issues that confront not just Jammu and Kashmir, but across, and of course, Ladakh and across the country as well.
And the Prime Minister did talk about this. Supriya Srinath, do you notice this change in Jammu and Kashmir? Of course, Ladakh, we're already hearing of that Central University and celebrations that they're a separate union territory, but the tricolour, the internet, coming at a time when there were leaders who were saying that there wouldn't be anyone left to shoulder the tricolour if 370 is abrogated.
Look, I don't think there is anybody on this planet who wouldn't want peace in every part of the country. And I welcome any peace effort that is being made. However, I also vociferously fight for the peace and the democracy in Jammu and Kashmir. Every political party, every member of, the polity there or people who live there want democracy to be restored, want early elections. They want statehood. They were dismembered. I also, with every due respect to men in uniform, and sir, I come from a family where people have served and laid down their lives for the Indian Army, I will say to you, you have to respect my right as a politician to be able to come and voice my views even on Independence Day, because that is what independence is all about. Independence, विचारों की अभिव्यक्ति की आज़ादी, विचारों की आज़ादी, बोलने की आज़ादी. I respect you. You have to respect my right to be able to criticize this government. I have one very small thing to add. We all saw the kind of, allegations that have been raised against this government, and rightly so, because military-grade spyware was used to spy upon citizens, constitutional figures. When the Prime Minister says, कानून खत्म कर रहे हैं देश को, इतने सारे कानून हमने खत्म कर दिए, आई होप जासूसी भी बंद हो जाएगी इस देश में. और मैं स्वतंत्रता दिवस पर ये इसलिए कहती हूँ क्योंकि हमारी निजता की आज़ादी के साथ खिलवाड़ है, और मैं आशा करती हूँ कि अब सरकार ऐसा नहीं करेगी, चाहे वो चीफ जस्टिस ऑफ इंडिया की बात हो, चाहे विपक्ष की बात हो.
Tom Varakan, you want to respond to the points that Supriya Srinath makes? And Supriya Srinath, if I may, is district development council elections or a block development council elections not democracy as far as the Congress party is concerned? Is that not grassroots democracy, ma'am?
No, absolutely it is. I am not denying that. But all I'm saying is that Jammu and Kashmir is clamoring for early elections, clamoring for statehood. Yes, you may have done away with a certain article, but why have you dismembered them? Look at the demand that was made by everybody who met the Prime Minister from Jammu and Kashmir. They all want statehood and they all want early elections, and that is what the government needs to work towards. I am not for a minute disputing that yes, there needs to be peace in the region. I laud every effort to bring in peace. But let us not gloss over the achievements of the past few years in Jammu and Kashmir as well. And I think that has been stated categorically on record now, whether it is the Central University, whether it's the AIIMS, whether it's the hospitals, whether it is the Banial Tunnel or the Srinagar Tunnel. They were all sanctioned by, approved by and built by your past governments. This government may have inaugurated them.
Tom Vadakkan wants to quickly respond to you before I come to the next aspect. Because do keep in mind, I cover Jammu and Kashmir and very closely. Internet blockage used to be almost a regular aspect. Today, as India Today's reporters are reporting from ground.
But Gaurav, there was internet blockage for almost 2 years in Jammu and Kashmir.
And are we moving towards a better time, Supriya Srinath? That's the point. But okay, Tom Vadakkan, respond. Restoration of statehood and what the Gupkar Alliance says. Supriya Srinath says, where is democracy?
Well, for the visually handicapped, I have nothing to add. The point is, Sindhu University in Ladakh attempt to create an educational hub in Ladakh. The delimitation work that is going on is a foundation work for holding elections. And these are basics. Without these basics, now who said they are not going to be given statehood or union territory? We have promised all that. And every time our promises are used to say that we want it urgently. It's not instant coffee. There's to be groundwork done. And the groundwork is being done by the Delimitation Commission that is working actively. And now about the internet facilities that are available, there is freedom of expression. There is that kind of freedom of movement. Your honorable editor has been there. Most of the journalists have been there. Security levels are much more different from what they were earlier. Tourists have started arriving. Investments have started coming. Now, these are credentials. We don't have to cry over the rooftop. It's happening. And we don't believe that we should go into a publicity stunt or anything of that kind. Yes, criticism will be there. Criticism for any good development, there's bound to be criticism. We accept the criticism positively, and we will ensure that if there is constructive criticism, we will adopt it, assimilate it, and take the nation forward. We are not the ones to look back
Tom Vadakkan, stay with me. I'll come back with the headlines.